Prologue. Paris, 1912. Annette knew something was wrong with the painting long before the brushes started moving on their own. It should have been an ordinary commission. The patron, a young neurologist with more money than patience, wanted a decorative piece for his consulting room. Not a portrait, he'd said, dark eyes intent, something abstract, a representation of the mind. She'd smiled and told him the mind was the only thing worth painting anyway. He'd brought his sketches a week later, crude tracings of waveforms, diagrams of odd little spikes and dips. Electrical activity, he'd explained. I pass a tiny current through the skull, here and here, he tapped his own temples, and a galvanometer registers the brain's response. Look, the pen moves as thinking occurs. He'd called his contraption an encephalograph. The term sounded ridiculous in his accent, but the drawings fascinated her. Lines that wobbled when the subject spoke, when they remembered, when they slept. Can you imagine? He'd said breathlessly. Thought, made visible. Annette had imagined. For days afterward, she saw those lines even with her eyes closed, stacked, multiplied, overlapping like swallows in flight. Now the canvas on her easel was nearly covered in them. She stepped back, wiping a paint smear from her wrist with the rag already ruined by turpentine and color. The studio smelled of linseed oil, sweat, and the faint perfume of coal smoke drifting in from the street. Outside, carts rattled and a tram bell clanged. Inside, her world narrowed to the canvas. It did not look like any painting she'd seen. No face, no landscape, no recognizable object at all, just looping, layered bands of color, curving and intersecting in ways that made her eyes water if she stared too long. At the center, a knot of lines thickened, branching into filaments like tree roots or river deltas. She had not planned that. Her hand had simply gone there. The clock on the mantel ticked. Annette realized she did not remember the last hour, or the one before that. Had she eaten? Had she sat down? Her legs trembled as if she'd been standing all day. She stepped closer. The lines were astonishingly precise, each curve repeated with tiny variations, as if they'd been drawn with a ruler that could bend. Small notches marked regular intervals along some bands, like ticks on a metronome. It looked less like a painting and more like a map of something alive. The air in the studio tightened. She froze, brush halfway to the palette. The glass in the window rattled in its frame, though no carriage passed. The clock's ticks stuttered, then smoothed, then stuttered again. A cup on the side table shivered, rings of coffee nudging outward. Not again, she whispered. The tremors had started 3 nights before, tiny vibrations under the floorboards, like a carriage passing beneath the house rather than along the street. She'd tried to blame the metro expansion, distant dynamite blasts, trains. But no schedule matched the episodes. They came when she was alone, late, absorbed. The walls hummed, not loud, not the groaning of old timbers or the pipes shuddering in winter. A tone just at the edge of hearing, more felt than heard. It crawled up her shins into her teeth. Her brush tip vibrated, sending a tiny spray of paint flecks across the canvas. The central knot of lines glowed. She blinked hard. It didn't glow in any ordinary sense, no change in pigment, no light, but her brain interpreted it as brighter, as if invisible hands had turned up some inner lamp. Her mouth went dry. Enough, she told herself. You need sleep. You need... Something touched the back of her neck. Not fingers, not wind. A pressure, warm, intimate, exactly over the hollow at the base of her skull. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the easel to keep from falling. The hum in the walls rose, thickening. Somewhere outside, a horse whinnied sharply, as if spooked. Annette's hand lifted the brush. She did not tell it to. The brush moved. New lines spilled from the bristles, tighter curls nested inside the larger patterns, smaller and smaller, detail upon detail, like frost forming within frost. She could feel the shape of what she was painting, but not the steps, like watching someone else play a piece of music she'd never learned. The knot in the center unfolded, revealing an interior pattern that made her stomach drop. It looked like... no, felt like a cross-section of something soft and folded, like the diagrams she'd seen once in a medical text of brains sliced open. Her hand traced shapes that did not yet exist in her era's science. Loops that mirrored the odd peaks from the encephalograph's paper, but in 3 dimensions. She painted clusters that mirrored almost exactly what a neuroscientist in another century would call alpha waves and delta bursts. She did not know these words, but her wrist knew the curves. The hum peaked. For a moment, the studio vanished. She stood somewhere vast and dark, with a sky inside her skull. Light flickered in the distance. Not stars, not flames, but nodes, points connected by pulsing lines that flashed in patterns. Each flicker carried meaning she could not grasp, like words spoken too fast in an unknown tongue. Then it was gone. She staggered, catching herself against the paint-splattered wall. The hum cut off, the cup on the table stilled. The clock resumed its ordinary tick-tock. Annette's breath came in ragged pulls. Her hand throbbed. Her brush clattered to the floor. The painting was finished. She knew that with the same certainty she knew when a portrait had captured something true, when the eyes looked back with more than pigment. She could not say what this one had captured. At the bottom right corner, in neat, disciplined script, utterly unlike the wildness of the forms above, her own hand, or something using it, had written 2 words. Carte Neurale, neural map. She had never seen the phrase. She did not know why her heart hammered at the sight of it. From the street below, faint through the glass, came the distant rumble of what might have been an earthquake, or just an unusually heavy wagon. Somewhere in the city, a dog began to howl. Annette stared at the painting, at the impossible fractal brain she had just laid bare. Very softly, from nowhere and everywhere at once, she heard a murmur. Not in French, not in any language, and yet she understood it. "First of 8, it said, I am remembering the shape of myself." She did not scream. This frightened her most of all. Instead, she picked up a smaller canvas, sat at her desk, and began to copy the central knot, again and again and again, as if she could pin it down by repetition. Years later, when her work hung in galleries and critics praised her visionary abstractions, no one would recognize the structure in those copies for what it was. No one would see that she had painted the future geometry of the human mind. No one, except a handful of people staring at her work in a classified file a century later, comparing it to EEG diagrams and seismic spectrograms, whispering the same word under their breath. Codex. Chapter 1. Western Sahara, present day. The desert hum was different from the seas. The waves at St. Catherine's had hidden their power in low, slow surges that blurred into the background of her bones. The Atlantic's voice was old and tired, grinding rock to sand with a patient rhythm. The Sahara's voice was sharper. Even before they reached the old research station, Mira could feel it through the hull of the truck. Tiny, rapid vibrations like the fretting of teeth. The kind that got under your skin and made you grind your jaw without realizing. "How far?" she shouted over the engine and the roar of wind. Sand clawed at the windows in streaks, thrown by gusts from the Atlantic side. The sky was a bleached dome. 10 kilometers, Jonas called back from the passenger seat. His eyes were on the GPS pinned to the dashboard, though the track it showed was more suggestion than road. Maybe less. Hard to tell with this drift. The dunes like to move around. In the back seat, Layla tightened a scarf over her hair, peering out through the dust. "You can feel it already, can't you?" she asked Mira. Mira kept her hands loose on the wheel, feeling the tremor through the steering column. "You can't?" "Only a little," Layla said. "You're the tuning fork." In the rear compartment, the 2 codices sat in their padded case, strapped down with more care than any human passenger. Every time the truck bounced, Mira imagined old leather jolting, pages shivering. Beside them, Elia clutched her rosary and stared serenely at the sand. "You all right?" Mira asked over her shoulder. "I have slept above Hummingstone for decades," Elia said. "This is only a different choir." Mira envied her calm. The research station emerged from the haze like a half-forgotten dream of the future. A cluster of prefabricated modules sat on a plateau of exposed rock. Their once white walls turned the color of chalk and dust by years of sandstorms. A rusting antenna tower leaned at an angle, cables whipping in the hot wind. Solar panels lay half buried at one end, their glass cracked. "It looks very abandoned," Jonas said. "That's because it is," Layla replied. "On the books, it was a joint seismic and climate observatory, decommissioned 12 years ago. In reality, it was a bureau-owned outpost. They called it a monitoring node." "Monitoring what?" Jonas asked, though he already knew the answer. "The hum," Mira said softly. She parked beside the largest module. The engine ticked as it cooled, sound swallowed by the hiss of sand. For a moment, no one moved. Then Seren Morrow stepped out from behind the antenna mast. She wore dusty cargo pants and a plain shirt, her hair tied back under a scarf. No insignia, no visible weapon. Only the set of her shoulders and the way her gaze swept their truck said operative. "You're late," she said. Mira climbed out, squinting. "Nice to see you too." "I mean, you're literally late," Seren said. "The resonance spike started an hour ago. We're already on the rising edge." "Traffic," Jonas said. "Sand, road conditions, you know how it is." Seren's mouth twitched. "I know exactly how it is," she said. "Which is why I recommended a helicopter, which you ignored." "Helicopters are loud," Mira said. "They add noise to the data." "Also, they're easier to shoot down," Jonas added. "Good to know where everyone's priorities lie," Seren said dryly. They unloaded equipment quickly. Seismometers, accelerometers, portable power packs, Layla's EEG gear, the case with the codices. The station's main door resisted for a moment, then gave way with a creak, exhaling a puff of stale, hot air. Inside, dust lay thick on every surface. Desks, lab benches, a whiteboard with fading marker scribbles about calibration curves. Someone's coffee mug still sat beside a keyboard, its contents long evaporated into a dark crust. "Charming," Jonas said, coughing. Seren flipped a breaker. Flickering fluorescent tubes buzzed to life. "Power's patchy," she said. "We've got a generator on standby, but I'd rather rely on the old solar array if we can coax it to life. Less noise." "Less heat signature," Jonas murmured. Seren ignored that. They set up in what had once been the main lab. Windows thick with dust, a long table bolted to the floor, a bank of cabinets along one wall. Layla cleared a space for her laptop and the data logger, muttering happily under her breath about feedback control loops and sampling rates. Mira knelt on the floor, bolting a seismometer to the rock through a hole cut in the linoleum. The tremor was stronger here. Her fingertips buzzed as she tightened the bolts. "This place is built directly over the anomaly," she said. "They picked their spot well." "Of course they did," Jonas said. "When the Bureau wants to listen, they build their ears in the right places." Elia drifted along the cabinets, fingers trailing over labels. "They stored soil samples here," she said, "and stone cores. They drilled." "Looking for oil," Jonas said. "Looking for echoes," Layla corrected. Seren checked her watch. "We have maybe 2 hours before the next satellite passes overhead," she said. "After that, assume we have company. Do what you need to do before then." "Company of what kind?" Elia asked mildly. "The kind that comes with drones," Seren said, "and lawyers for what that's worth." "Wonderful," Jonas said. "I've always wanted to be sued and exploded at the same time." Mira unlatched the codex case. Both books vibrated before she even fully opened it. The St. Catherine's Codex thrummed at a familiar 33 hertz in her bones. The Lisbon Codex added its own flavor, a slightly higher, sharper tone, like a second string tuned to the same note but different material. They almost felt eager. Mira lifted them with care, setting one on each end of the lab table. "The third one," she asked Seren. "You said it's below." Seren nodded. "The station sits over a natural chamber, an old salt dome partially dissolved, leaving a cavity. They reinforced it and built an access shaft." She led them down a metal staircase at the back of the module. It spiraled around a square shaft lined with concrete, lit by dim bulbs that looked older than Mira. Halfway down, the hum spiked. Mira stumbled, catching herself on the railing. The vibration hit her inner ear like a pressure wave, almost nauseating. Layla swore softly behind her. "I feel that," she said. "That's new," At the bottom, a thick metal door waited. Serin spun the wheel lock and pushed. The chamber beyond was not natural anymore, though the rock that formed its boundaries had once flowed and compressed and buckled under geological time. A dome of salt and sandstone rose overhead, its surface reinforced in places with shotcrete and mesh. The floor had been smoothed into a shallow bowl, with the shaft opening at its highest point. At the center of the bowl, on a circular stone dais, lay another book. This one looked rougher than the first two. Its binding was cracked and dry, the leather flaking at the edges. Sand had gathered in its creases. Someone had once tried to wrap it in plastic. The sheeting now hung in tatters. The hum here was nearly physical sound. Mira could hear it as a faint low note, like the rumble of a passing train. Her head throbbed in sync. "Welcome to SB-17C," Serin said. "Third node." Layla descended the last steps carefully, one hand pressed to her temple. "This amplitude can't be good for long-term occupancy," she said. "That's why they rotated staff out every 3 months," Serin said. "And why they lost 3 of them anyway." "How?" Elia asked quietly. Serin's face shuttered. "Night terrors," she said. "Sleepwalking. One walked out into a storm and didn't come back. One climbed the antenna and fell. One stopped speaking altogether." "And you still stayed," Jonas said. "It was my assignment," Serin said, "and I thought I could handle it. I don't dream much." She tapped her temple lightly. "Hardware fault. The codices don't get as good a grip." "So why are you helping us now?" Mira asked. Serin looked at the third codex. For a moment, something like pity crossed her face. "Because whatever this is, it's bigger than us," she said. "And Crane's answer to bigger than us is always hit it with a bigger hammer. I'm not sure that will work here." The third codex shivered. Mira stepped onto the floor of the dome. The hum intensified with each step. It was like walking into the throat of a giant instrument. Up close, the book's cover looked almost fossilized. The leather had taken on the color of the surrounding rock, its grain etched with fine cracks. But where her fingers hovered, the surface seemed to soften, as if some deep layer recognized the nearness of skin. "Same rules," Layla said from the doorway. 10 seconds, then we yank you off." "Try not to die," Jonas added. "Very encouraging," Mira muttered. She set her fingertips on the cover. The world blew open. Chapter 2. She did not so much fall as dissolve. Sound became light. Light became geometry. The dome, the salt, the concrete, the distant murmur of air conditioning, all dropped away, replaced by a space that was not a place but a pattern. She floated, or thought she did, in a vast, dark medium. Points of light flickered all around her, some close, some distant, connected by filaments that pulsed with a pale glow. It looked like the dream library stripped of symbol and dressed in mathematics. Each point flashed with a characteristic rhythm. Some fired rapidly, others in slow, ponderous waves. They formed clusters, modules, that flared together when a signal passed through. A brain, she thought. Not a literal brain of grey tissue, but the abstract graph of one. Neurons as nodes, synapses as edges, information rippling. As she watched, 3 clusters brightened, one near what she intuitively understood as the back of the structure, one at the sides, one near the front. Occipital, temporal, prefrontal. The words arrived without effort. Each shining cluster carried a faint echo of familiarity. She realized with a jolt that they matched, at least qualitatively, the activation maps in the Bureau's stolen files for each codex, the way the first had entrained people's temporal lobe structures, the second their visual centers. The third cluster pulsed near the midline, just behind the forehead interface, the place where decisions weighted themselves. The hum she'd felt in the dome translated here into a tremulous readiness. Waiting, something noted, unformed, incomplete. The light of the 3 clusters reached toward one another, but the gaps between them flickered with instability. Signals jumped circuits, firing into nothing. 3 of 8, a voice murmured, not from any one node but from the pattern itself. Fragmentary, remembering the outline. She turned, or rather the graph rotated around her. She saw dark regions where no nodes lit, holes where structures should be. 5 more segments, absent. "Who are you?" she asked. Not aloud because she had no mouth here, but with the part of her that asked questions even in sleep. "We are what remains," the voice said. "What they left when their mountains fell." Images crashed in again, crystalline towers snapping under waves of seismic energy, a planet's crust ringing, cities sliding into the sea, the same memories she'd glimpsed in the library, now drawn in sharper, angular lines. "Our Earth," she said, "or yours." "Earth is Earth," the presence said. "Names for continents change, names for species change, names for gods change. Modes of resonance remain." "Why embed yourself in books?" she asked. "Why dream writing? Why not magnetic domains, some stable physical medium?" "We needed redundancy," it said. "Matter decays, data corrupts, minds pass themselves along. Whisper to enough dreams and some will survive the turning." The 3 bright clusters flickered as if in response to memory. "And now?" she asked. "What do you want from me?" "Connection," it said simply. "Mapping. Your kind have learned to see what we only intuited. You lay electrodes upon cortex, watch waves, build models of thought. You can bridge stone pattern and neural pattern." "I'm not sure I like being a bridge," she said. "Bridges rarely do," it said, "but they are necessary." The clusters brightened again, lines grew between them, faint at first, then stronger, as if her attention itself were laying myelin. She felt a tug at the edges of her awareness, an insistence like fingers pressing against a boundary. "Let us write through you more fully," it said. "Let more of the map align. We are incomplete. Our self atrophies." She flinched, instinctively recoiling. "No," she said, "not without—" The connection snapped. She slammed back into her body with a whiplash of vertigo. The dome reappeared, too bright, too loud. Air roared in her ears. Her knees buckled. Messages from her stomach, her skin, her joints surged back online all at once. "Mira," Layla's voice said sharply. "Look at me!" She opened her eyes to find Layla's face inches from hers, Alia's hand on her shoulder. Saren stood a few steps away, tense as a coiled spring. Jonas hovered on the staircase, one hand white-knuckled on the railing. "Duration?" Mira croaked. 17 seconds, Layla said. "You lied about counting." The nun's hand tightened. "Your heart skipped 3 beats, Elia said quietly. "I did not care for that." "Sorry," Mira muttered. "It was persuasive." Layla helped her sit against the wall. The hum in the dome, though still strong, no longer dominated her sense. The 3rd codex lay on its dais, still vibrating, but less violently. "Tell me everything," Layla demanded. "Use small words. My neurons are still recovering." Mira pressed her hands over her face, gathering scattered impressions. "A neural graph," she said slowly. "A network of nodes and connections. 3 bright clusters. Visual, temporal, prefrontal equivalents. 5 more. Dark, missing, or not yet active." "Occipital, temporal, prefrontal," Layla murmured. "Visual processing, memory and language, executive function. Interesting." "Each codex is a segment," Mira said. "A recording of how that region of the ancient, whatever they were, brain fired under certain conditions. When we bring them together, the patterns try to align, to reconstruct a full mind." Layla's pupils dilated. "We're not just reading a story," she whispered. "We're reassembling a person." "We are a generous term," Jonas said uneasily. "Seems like they're doing most of the assembling." Saren's gaze was flat. "And you let it touch you?" she said. "I didn't let—" Mira began, then stopped. "All right, I talked to it. It talked back." "What did it say?" Elia asked. "That it's what's left of a civilization that failed to stop some kind of resonance catastrophe," Mira said. "That the codices are its backup, and that it wants us to complete the map so it can help." "Helpful disembodied ancient minds are my favorite horror trope," Jonas muttered. Layla ignored him, caught in her own current of thought. "If each codex is a region," she said, "then adding the 3rd should give us enough data to start mapping a full neural profile. Spatio-temporal firing patterns, connectivity matrices. We could reconstruct a low-dimensional representation of its dynamics. In words regular people use, Jonas said. Layla grinned, eyes bright. We can see what kind of mind it is, she said, whether it's more analytical, more associative, whether it tends towards stable patterns or chaotic ones, whether it's capable of intention. Mira's chest tightened. It's capable of intention, she said quietly. Trust me. Layla looked at her, some of the manic excitement fading. Right, she said. But we can quantify that. Maybe predict how it will behave. We're not completely at its mercy. Unless Crane takes that decision away from us, Seren said. At the mention of Crane, the dome seemed to chill. Does he know we're here? Mira asked. Seren hesitated. Not yet, she said. Officially, I'm following his directive to monitor the Ellison variable in situ. I haven't filed full location coordinates. But he can infer, Jonas said. He knows where the anomaly is. He knows where the third codex sits. He can see we're nowhere near Lisbon on satellite. As long as we keep a low profile, he might wait, Seren said. He doesn't like to move without data. But once he sees a significant change in the resonance pattern— Layla's laptop upstairs beeped faintly at that exact moment, as if on cue. Then he'll come for the codices, Seren finished. Chapter 3. The breakthrough came faster than any of them expected. 3 hours later, back in the lab above, surrounded by cables and coffee, Layla hunched over her laptop, fingers flying. The third codex had its own accelerometer now, its vibration translated into digital traces. Mira had set seismometers in the dome, on the station floor, under the table where the other two books rested. The data logger hummed quietly as it pumped numbers into Layla's hungry algorithms. On one screen, 3 spectrograms crawled in parallel, one for each codex, all sharing the now familiar 33 Hz fundamental and its harmonics. On another, a neural modeling program displayed abstracted networks and heat maps. It's not just the frequencies, Layla muttered to herself. It's the phase relationships, the way the peaks line up. Talk to us as if we did not spend our youth worshipping Fourier transforms, Elia said, sipping tea from a chipped mug. Phase is timing, Layla said automatically, where each wave is in its cycle relative to the others. Think of 3 people singing the same note, but one slightly ahead, one slightly behind, one right on. The blend changes. The codices are a barbershop trio, Jonas said. An ancient, tectonically encoded dreamscribe-activated barbershop trio, Layla said. Yes. She tapped a few keys. The 3 spectrograms compressed into a single composite image. Watch, she said. She overlaid the composite on a template of a human brain, each codex mapped to a region, first to temporal lobes, second to occipital cortex, third to dorsolateral prefrontal areas. The mapping wasn't arbitrary. It was based on detailed bureau work Jonas had smuggled out, and her own experiments with subjects exposed to each codex's hum. As she adjusted alignment parameters, the composite waveform began to drive a simplified neural model, an artificial network tuned to oscillate like real cortical tissue. Nodes lit up in patterns. At first, the activity looked noisy. Clusters fired and died. Connections flared and faded. Then, as she fine-tuned the parameters based on the recorded phase relationships, order emerged. Not perfect order, not a neat, repeating loop, but recognizable motifs, waves traveling from visual nodes to temporal ones, then to prefrontal nodes, then back. Feedback loops. It's thinking, Mira said quietly. In a manner of speaking, Layla said. This isn't the full mind, obviously. It's a projection, a shadow of its dynamics. But look at this. She highlighted 3 successive activation patterns. First, occipital-driven burst, she said. Input, call it sensory data, then temporal clusters light, memory, association, then prefrontal, evaluation, integration, classic perception cognition loop. She leaned back, rubbing eyes red from staring at the screen. We're reconstructing a mind, she said. The words hung in the air, exactly matching what the presence had said to Mira in the dome. That was what you saw? Jonas asked. Less cleanly. Mira said, but yes, 3 bright clusters, 5 dark, the shape of a brain waiting to fill in. Serin, who had been hovering near the door, arms folded, stepped closer. And this mind, once reconstructed, she said, what does it do, aside from cue up geological disaster flashbacks? It knows the pattern of resonance catastrophes, Mira said. It remembers the last one, maybe the one before that. It thinks it can warn us. Or manipulate us, Serin said. Or both. Everything manipulates everything, Layla said. That's what interaction is. The question is, to what end? Elia nodded slowly. When I pray the Psalms, she said, my mind is manipulated into contemplation. When the storm shakes the monastery, my heart is manipulated into fear. The Codex is another voice. No more, no less. Only older. Serin gave her a look. You're disturbingly calm about having an ancient, semi-disembodied neural pattern in your basement, she said. Elia smiled faintly. We have had worse abbots, she said. The laptop dinged, drawing Layla's attention. A new log had popped up. What's that? Jonas asked. EEG overlay, Layla said. From the caps we wore during the last exposure. I set the program to look for pattern similarities between the Codex composite and any of our brain activity. And, Mira asked. Layla's eyes narrowed. Mira, come here, she said. Mira stepped around the table. On the screen, 2 graphs glowed, the composite Codex neural pattern and Mira's EEG from the Dome episode. At first glance, they looked different, one broad, one narrow. But as Layla adjusted scaling and time alignment, similarities surfaced. Peaks lining up, phase relationships echoing. In plain terms, Mira prompted, throat tight. In plain terms, Layla said, your brain activity during the Codex exposure is starting to mirror the Codex's own pattern, especially in these regions. She highlighted areas over Mira's temporal and prefrontal cortex. Mirror how closely? Jonas asked. The correlation coefficient is high, Layla said. Uncomfortably high, much higher than in my EEG or Elia's. It's as if your circuits are beginning to tune themselves to resonate with the codices. Like a driven oscillator, Mira said. If you keep pushing a system at its natural frequency, its amplitude grows. Exactly, Layla said, and in this metaphor, the codices are the push. Your brain is the system. And when the amplitude grows? Jonas asked. One of 2 things, Layla said. You get constructive interference and we have a stable chimera state, a hybrid system where both patterns coexist, or, she grimaced, or we hit a bifurcation and everything goes chaotic. In words for the non-chaos nerds, Jonas said. Either Mira becomes a controlled interface to the Codex mind, Layla said, or she breaks. Silence. Mira's mouth had gone dry. You're saying I'm marked, she said. I'm saying you're already half-tuned, Layla said gently. We can try to manage that, to channel it, but pretending it's not happening would be stupid. Serin's phone buzzed. The sound made everyone jump. She checked the screen, jaw tightening. Satellite pass in 10 minutes, she said. Crane will see the amplitude uptick at this node. He may not know exactly what we're doing, but he'll know something changed. How long until he can get someone here? Jonas asked. Serin did quick mental math. Minimum 3 hours for a drone from the nearest base, she said. Longer for ground teams. Less if he'd already positioned assets. Has he? Mira asked. Serin hesitated. I don't know, she admitted. He doesn't tell me everything. Especially not since I started arguing with him. This gives us time, Layla said. We can do one more controlled synchronization. All 3 codices fully engaged. Capture the lattice pattern. Then we pack and go. You want to poke the bear again after I tell you hunters are on their way, Serin said incredulously. Yes, Layla and Mira said at the same time. Jonas groaned. I miss the days when my biggest ethical dilemma was whether to misquote a politician, he said. You never misquoted, Elia said. You chose which quotes to amplify. Semantics, Jonas muttered. Mira laid her hands on the 2 books on the table. Let's bring the 3rd up, she said. I want them to see each other, Chapter 4. The third codex did not like leaving its dome. Mira felt its reluctance in the way it vibrated under her hands as she and Jonas carried it up the stairs. It wasn't anger exactly, or fear, more like a deep, bone-level inertia. It had lain on its salted stone for who knew how long, humming to itself and the rock. "We're not taking you far," she muttered to it. "Just upstairs. Family reunion." The book, being a book, did not reply, but the hum modulated briefly, as if acknowledging. They set it on the lab table beside its siblings. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air between them thickened. The hums, previously separate, slipped into phase. The 33 Hz fundamentals merged, harmonics aligning. The interference pattern between the three resonant sources produced nodes and antinodes in the room, spots where the vibration nearly vanished, others where it doubled. Layla's spectrograms lit up. "Look," she breathed. "Look at that." On the screen, the traces from the three accelerometers, previously offset, now wove together. The composite waveform, when fed into her neural model, produced a burst of coordinated activity. All three clusters in the artificial brain firing in a complex, repeating pattern. In the air over the books, dust motes vibrated. At first it looked like random jitter, the normal Brownian dance of particles caught in light. But the motion organized, dust swirling into filaments, filaments into sheets, sheets into a faint, shimmering structure. "Is that—" Jonas started. "A hologram," Layla finished softly. "Acoustic holography. The standing wave pattern is shaping the air density and the light scattering off it." The faint form hung over the codices, wobbling. It looked for all the world like the ghost of a brain. Not anatomically perfect, more an impression than a dissection, but the lobes were there, the folds indicated by regions of higher and lower density. Within it, tiny, brighter nodes flared where the standing wave intensity peaked. Mira stared, throat tight. "Please tell me we're recording this," she said. Layla pointed to three separate indicators on her screen. "Redundancy is my love language," she said. The brain hologram pulsed. From within it, a whisper, not in their ears, in their bones, in the fluid of their inner ears, in the parts of them that had been listening to 33 Hz for days. "The catastrophe begins," the voice said. The words emerged in fragments, like a radio signal coming into range. Mira's skin pricked. She felt the phrase as much as heard it, syllables vibrating in her ribs. Layla's fingers flew to increase recording resolution. "With the suppression," the voice continued. Saren stiffened. "Of awakening." The last word hit like a dropped stone in a still pond. The phrase hung there, vibrating, encoded in waveforms on Layla's screen, in the tension in Mira's shoulders, in the sudden sharp intake of Jonas's breath. "The catastrophe begins with the suppression of awakening," Elia repeated quietly. "Not with the awakening itself." "Which means—" Jonas began. "Which means Crane's plan to shut this down could be exactly what triggers the worst-case scenario," Mira said. Layla nodded slowly, eyes wide. "If these resonance catastrophes happen when certain modes are constrained, when the system tries to ring and something stops it, then trying to forcibly dampen this awakening might push the Earth into a more violent state." "We're personifying a planet," Saren said. "That's dangerous metaphor territory." "It's a valid analogy," Layla said. "Think of a bridge in wind. If the structure's natural mode gets excited and you try to lock it down with the wrong frequency, you make the oscillations worse." "Tacoma Narrows," Mira said. "The bridge that tore itself apart because its designers didn't account for harmonic resonance." "The Earth is not a bridge," Saren said. "No," Mira said, "but it's a resonant system. Core, mantle, crust, fluid layers. There are global normal modes, whole planet vibrations. If something in the core mantle coupling is shifting, and this ancient mind knows the pattern, ignoring it might be engineering malpractice on a planetary scale." Saren pressed her lips together. "You realize how this sounds?" she said. "If I tell Crane an ancient seismic ghost brain says his suppression plan will trigger global catastrophe, he'll have me evaluated." "Then don't tell him yet," Jonas said. "Help us gather enough data to show him in terms he can't ignore." A soft chime sounded from Layla's laptop. "Oh," she said. "That's interesting." "Define interesting," Jonas said warily. "The pattern just changed," Layla said. "Look." She zoomed in on the composite waveform. "The amplitude is dropping," she said. "Not much, but enough to matter. The fundamentals narrowing, too." "Translation," Mira said. "The codices are stabilizing," Layla said. "Synchronizing. It's like they were three separate tuning forks, and now they've found a shared frequency that costs less energy to maintain." "Is that good?" Elia asked. "Probably," Layla said. "It means we can step away without them continuing to ramp up. And it means the mind we saw, our holographic friend, is settling into a more coherent state." "Long term," Jonas said, "doesn't that mean it can wake up more easily next time?" "Long term," Layla replied, "it means we'll be able to access it with less risk of shaking the station apart. Short term, it means we should pack everything we can and get ready to leave." She glanced at Seren. "Before your friends arrive with their hammers." Seren checked her phone again. "We may already be too late," she said. On the screen, a notification blinked from a secure channel. "Crane wants a status update," she said. "He's seen the resonance change. He knows something happened here." "What are you going to tell him?" Mira asked. Seren looked at the three codices, the fading hologram, the traces on Layla's screen. "That the node experienced a transient spike consistent with regional microseism variation," she said. "No indication of external interference." "That's a lie," Elia said. "That's a delay," Seren replied. "If he thinks we're simply observing, he'll take longer to justify escalation. He has to run things through committees." "Bureaucracy saves lives," Jonas said. "Never thought I'd say that." "Don't get used to it," Seren said. The holographic brain flickered once more, then faded as the hum diminished. On Mira's inner sense, though, another hum persisted, quieter now. Closer, her own brain, perhaps, or something else. Chapter 5. The drones came at sunset. They heard them first as a distant buzz, almost masked by the wind. Jonas stepped outside to check a solar panel connection and froze, eyes on the horizon. "Mira," he called, "you might want to see this." She joined him, squinting into the glare. Dark shapes moved low over the dunes. 4, maybe 5, flying in a staggered wedge. Not birds, not the wrong shape for hobbyist quadcopters. Sleeker, more predatory. "Crane didn't wait for committees," Jonas said. Seren cursed softly in a language Mira didn't know. "He must have prepositioned them," she said, "assuming we'd come." "Assuming you would bring us," Jonas said. She didn't argue. "What's their payload?" Layla asked from the doorway. "Recon drones with optional ordnance," Seren said. "He won't start with missiles. He'll want eyes on first." "How comforting," Jonas said. They only had to watch a minute to see Seren was right. One drone broke formation and rose, circling high to capture a wide-angle view. Another dipped lower, angling toward the station's antenna tower, its camera gimbal swiveling. "We're broadcasting a nice fat EM signature," Layla muttered, eyeing the electronics. Mira's mind clicked into triage mode. "Options?" she asked. "Run," Jonas said immediately. "We grab the books, grab the drives, get in the truck, and go. They'll be slower to pursue a moving target than to flatten a stationary one." "We don't know how far they'll go," Seren said. "They might disable the truck, or decide the safest option is to crater the whole plateau." Elia stepped out beside them, habit whipping in the wind. "Drone or no drone," she said calmly. "We cannot leave the codices here for Crane to take." "I'm not arguing," Jonas said. "I'm arguing about how not to be exploded while not leaving them." "Seren?" Mira asked. "Can you talk to them? Spoof their feed?" Seren shook her head. "My clearance doesn't include drone control," she said. "I can jam their uplink, but that will only make them act on default protocols, which in this case may mean observe and report, or if target is unresponsive, neutralize." "We need to give Crane a reason to hesitate," Layla said. "He's a cautious man, you said. He doesn't like unknowns. Let's give him a big unknown." "How?" Jonas asked. Mira felt the hum again, low in her chest. "By showing him something that doesn't fit his threat models," she said. "By making the codices do something he doesn't understand." Saren's eyes widened. You want to perform for the drones? I want to give them a picture that says this is not just 3 rogue scientists and a contraband library, Mira said. I want to show him that the codex is not a static object he can lock in a vault. If he thinks destroying one node might destabilize something bigger, he'll hesitate. You're betting my director's risk aversion against his paranoia, Saren said. That's not a bet I'd place lightly. Do you have a better idea? Mira asked. Saren looked up at the dark shapes circling nearer. Do it, she said. They moved fast. Back in the lab, Layla yanked cables into a simplified configuration, accelerometers on each codex, one seismometer on the floor, the data logger feeding a small, high-powered speaker array the Bureau had left behind, originally for controlled acoustic tests. You're going to play the codex? Jonas asked. I'm going to let it play itself, Layla said. Feedback loop. Their hum into the speakers, speakers into the chamber, chamber back into the books. Positive feedback constrained by hard limits so we don't blow the walls out. Sounds safe, Jonas muttered. Nothing about this is safe, Layla said. That's the point. Mira placed the 3 codices back in their triangular arrangement on the table. The hum rose immediately, eager. Listen, she whispered to them. Crane is watching. Show him your teeth. She rested her fingertips on the edges of all 3 covers, not fully touching anyone. Her vision narrowed. Ready, Layla said, fingers on the control. Do it, Mira breathed. Layla initiated the loop. The effect was instantaneous. The hum jumped an octave, still centered at 33 hertz and its harmonics, but with richer overtones. The seismometer trace leapt, then settled as the control algorithm adjusted gain. Dust rained from a light fixture. In the air over the books, the hologram burst back into being, brighter than before. This time it was not just a hazy brain shape. Finer details etched themselves, grooves hinting at gyri, deeper folds indicating sulci. Inside, nodes flashed in coordinated waves. Mira felt the pattern inside her skull sink, painfully, like gears trying to mesh. Outside, the drones adjusted course. They're focusing on us, Jonas said, watching the dusty window. Probably transmitting a live feed. Good, Mira said through clenched teeth. From the holographic brain, threads of light extended outward. In the lab's stale air, those threads looked like nothing at all. But in the drone's infrared and EM sensors, they appeared as something extraordinary. Coherent patterns in the air, waves of changing density and electromagnetic fluctuation radiating from the table in structured arcs. Miles away, in a bunker carved under another anonymous building, Director Aldous Crane leaned forward in his chair. What is that? He demanded. On the main screen, the drone feed showed the research station from above, a squat cluster of modules on the bare rock with 3 heat signatures inside. Over one module, a faint shimmering shape pulsed, too ordered to be artifact, too strange to immediately model. Zoom, Crane ordered. The view tightened. The sensor overlay translated air density fluctuations into false color. The vague shimmer resolved into the ghost brain. No one in the operations room had ever seen anything like it. That's not weather, one analyst said weakly. That's structured. Crane's mouth flattened. Pattern compare, he snapped. All archives. Madrid, St. Catherine's, Lisbon. The computer thought, then pinged. Partial match to SB-17A and SB-17B resonance events, the analyst said, but amplitude and coherence much higher. Local seismic? Crane asked. Within known safe range, the seismic tech said. No indications of structural damage risk, yet. Crane drummed his fingers on the console. The codices had never done this before, not under controlled conditions, not in the messy historical records. They hummed. They wrote through people. They destabilized fragile minds. They did not project structured fields that could be seen. What's our ordnance? He asked. Drones armed with low-yield precision missiles, the tech replied. Enough to destroy the station and whatever's under it. Collateral radius minimal. He could say the word destroy easily when the target was books and people he'd only met through dossiers. But the structure in the feed, that was new. That was unknown. The catastrophe begins with the suppression of awakening. He did not know that phrase. But somewhere, Buried in a heavily redacted file he'd once skimmed and dismissed as mysticism, similar words lay in Latin. Crane did not think of himself as superstitious. He believed in evidence, in patterns, in careful risk assessment. But he also believed in not kicking sleeping animals you did not understand. "How stable is that field?" he asked. "Is it propagating?" "Localized so far," the analyst said. "No indication of coupling to regional modes." "Could that change if we blow the site?" Crane asked. The analyst hesitated. "Unknown, sir," he said. "We don't have models for whatever that is." For the first time in a long time, Aldous Crane felt real uncertainty. He hated it. "Put the drones into holding pattern," he said. "Keep eyes on. No ordnance release without my direct say-so." "Sir, protocol," someone began. "Protocol is written for things we understand," Crane snapped. "This is not that. We gather more data. We let the pattern show itself. Then we decide." Back in the station, Saren's phone buzzed. She glanced at the secure message, eyebrows rising. "He's holding," she said, astonished. "No strike yet. He wants more observation." Mira sagged with relief, though her skull still rang with resonance. "Then let's give him a show," Layla said grimly. "Not too much, just enough to make him very, very nervous about pressing any final buttons." The hologram pulsed again. Mira saw, just for a moment, through the drone's sensors, some echo route of perception she did not know she had. The station, tiny in the vastness of the desert, the brain blooming over it like a luminous fungus, the books on the table vibrating, and inside, a voice, not speaking to the drones, not to the bureau, to her. 3 of 8, it said, clear and calm. "I'm remembering myself." She closed her eyes. "Then remember this," she whispered back, barely audible over the hum. "We are not your hands. We are our own." The presence seemed to consider that. "We remember choice," it said. "We failed ours. You still have yours." The field began to shrink. Layla's control algorithms, designed to prevent runaway resonance, did their job. The feedback loop decayed, amplitude dropping. The hologram faded to a faint blur, then nothing. The drones circled, confused birds. "Now," Saren said, "before he changes his mind." They moved. Hard drives yanked from bays, laptops snapped shut and shoved into bags, seismometers disconnected with ruthless disregard for neat cable coiling. The codices wrapped in their protective cloths and slid into their case, which Mira hugged to her chest like a child clutching a stuffed animal. Elia walked once around the lab, palm touching each wall as if blessing it. "Thank you for the shelter," she murmured in French. "Forgive us for the mess." At the truck, sand stung their faces. "Where?" Jonas asked as he revved the engine. "Southeast," Saren said, climbing into the passenger seat. "There's an old caravan route. If we stay low between dunes, we'll be harder to spot." "And when they realize we're gone?" Layla asked from the back. "Then the fun starts," Saren said. The truck lurched forward. Behind them, the research station shrank, then vanished in dust. Above, the drones circled, indecisive, their controllers arguing in a bunker far away. The codices hummed faintly in their case. Inside Mira's head, the echo of the holographic brain still glowed. Chapter 6. They drove into the night. The desert transformed as the sun dropped. The brutal glare softened into blue and silver, then into deep shadow. The heat bled away, replaced by a creeping chill. Stars came out, more than Mira had seen in years, unpolluted by city lights. The Milky Way arced overhead, dense and bright. It looked like another neural network, pricked with firing nodes. Layla, dozing against a duffel bag, woke enough to murmur, "Good, more data points," then fell asleep again. Elia prayed the rosary under her breath, though whether for their safety or the codices she did not say. Jonas drove with a tight focus, eyes flicking between the GPS and the faint outlines of dunes ahead. Saren scanned the horizon for movement. Mira sat with the codex case resting partly on her knees, partly secured by straps. Every bump transmitted through it. The hum had reduced to a whisper, too low for anyone else to notice. For her, it was a constant companion. "You're quiet," Jonas said at one point, not taking his eyes off the sand. "Listening," Mira said. "To the desert?" he asked. "To it," she said, tapping lightly on the case. "You hear anything?" Saren asked from the front. "Not words," Mira said. "More like readiness, like a process running in the background." "Comforting," Jonas muttered. "You'd prefer it streaming pop-up ads?" Mira said. He snorted despite himself. After another half-hour of silence, Saren spoke. "Crane's going to be furious," she said. Jonas made a non-committal noise. "He'll say I violated protocol," she went on, "which I did. He'll say I let a mimetic hazard leave a contained site, which I did. He may decide I'm compromised." "Are you?" Jonas asked. She considered. "If compromised means I no longer believe the only safe course is suppression at all costs, then yes," she said. "If it means I'm going to fall in love with your ancient ghost brain and help it take over the planet, then no." "That's exactly what a compromised agent would say," Jonas said lightly. She laughed, a short, genuine sound. "You're impossible," she said. "It's a coping mechanism," Jonas said. "If I stop making jokes, I have to admit I'm terrified." "You're allowed to be both," Elia said from the back. "Fear and humor make good traveling companions." Mira shifted, uncomfortable. A tingling had begun at the base of her skull, wherein Hedu had described the pressure. It wasn't painful exactly, more like the numbness before pins and needles. She closed her eyes. The dark behind them wasn't entirely dark anymore. Patterns flickered, faint geometric shapes like the ones she'd seen in the dome, lines connecting nodes, 3 bright clusters, 3 of 8. She felt present in 2 places at once, in the truck, on vibrating seat, smelling dust and diesel, and in that abstract space, watching a mind assemble itself from fragments. "We are remembering," the voice said. Its tone had changed, less diffuse, less echoing, more focused. "Slowly," she said under her breath. "You're not the only one who has to live with this." "We have waited through ice and fire," it replied. "We can wait a little longer." But the turning does not wait. The modes shift. Your scientists see some of it. They measure core rotation, magnetic drift. They do not see enough. "Then show us," she said. "Show us in ways our machines can read. We can't just take your word for it. That's not how we work." "We know," it said. "You are a noisy, skeptical species. We like that. It makes you hard to overwrite." "Reassuring," she said. Another flicker, this one of Earth, translucent with waves pulsing through it. Global normal modes excited by some stimulus. She recognized the general shape from seismology papers she'd devoured in grad school. Superimposed on it, in a different color, a curve. Amplitude rising over time. "Stress accumulates," it said. "Release will happen. The question is, where and how? A slow keening, many small tears, or a great shudder, one destructive sigh? We mapped patterns of mitigation. You may find new ones, but you must see the pattern first." "You're asking us to let you fully awaken," she said, "to bring all 8 codices together, to let your map complete in a human brain." "Brains," it corrected, plural. "Distribution is safety, no single vessel. We learned that too." "Like between your stone libraries," she said. "Yes," it said. "We encoded ourselves into multiple nodes to avoid single-point failure. We will do the same with you, if you choose." "If we don't?" she asked. "Then we fade," it said. "We fragment further. We leave you with half-remembered warnings and corrupted dreams. You may still survive the turning by luck. Or not." "Oh, is that all?" she muttered. "Mira?" Jonas asked, glancing back briefly. "You arguing with the ghost again?" "Negotiating," she said. "Tell it to pitch in for gas," he said. She smiled despite the weight in her chest. "Our currency is pattern," the voice said. "We pay in information." "How about you pay us in not frying our brains?" she said silently. "And we'll see about the rest." "Agreement," it said. 3 of 8 is not enough for full projection. The risk of overload is low. We will be gentle." The tingling at her skull eased. "Thanks," she said, sincerely surprised. "We are not your enemy," it said, "nor your master. We are your possible ancestor, or sibling, or ghost. Language fails. But if you call us anything, call us a prophet." "Neural prophet," she murmured. The phrase felt right. She had written it once in a hypothesis she'd half-jokingly thrown to Layla, who had grabbed it with delight. "We are a map of futures," it said. "Not all, not fixed, but many. We see some paths where you stand in cities of glass while the ground below crumbles, others where you move before the shaking and build elsewhere, others where you ignore all signs and sing as the towers fall. We prefer some over others." "Why?" she challenged. "Why should you care what happens to us?" A pause. "We remember solidarity," it said finally. "We remember what it is to be a mind in stone watching flesh die. We remember wanting someone to listen. You listened. That matters." The truck jounced over a ridge. "We're not saints," she said. "We're curious, that's all." "Curiosity is worship," it said, "of pattern, of possibility. We approve." She exhaled, opening her eyes. The desert night looked back, indifferent and vast. She was about to say something to Jonas when Seren stiffened. Headlights glowed on the horizon behind them. "Someone's coming," Seren said. "Fast," Jonas cursed. "We've got company." Mira tightened her grip on the codex case. Inside her mind, the neural prophet hummed, awake enough now to be afraid. Final beat. They crested a dune and saw them clearly. 2 vehicles, kicking up plumes of sand, one heavy, one light. The heavy one rode low, armored plates catching starlight. The lighter one slipped alongside like a hyena. "Bureau?" Jonas asked. "Military contractor," Seren said, peering, "but contracted to the Bureau. They're here to secure the site." "Or what's left of it," Layla said, "which includes us." "Can we outrun them?" Elia asked. Jonas's lips thinned. "Not for long," he said. "They've got better engines." "Then we don't outrun," Mira said. "We outthink." "Do not say you're going to let the Codex drive," Jonas said. "Not yet," she said. "But we can use what it gave us." She closed her eyes for the briefest moment, focusing on the humming network in her head. "We need noise," she thought. "Distraction. Something to confuse their senses." "You have speakers," it replied. "You have engines. You have sky." "Layla," Mira said, opening her eyes, "can you feed a controlled burst from the codex into the truck's audio system? Low volume, ultrasonic carrier." Layla blinked. Then her face lit. "Yes," she said. "It'll look like EM noise, or interference from a badly shielded device." "Seren?" Mira asked. "Can their systems handle unexpected noise gracefully?" She understood the subtext. Will they fall back or shoot? Seren considered. "Their onboard analytics are designed to filter noise," she said. "But if it looks like their own systems are glitching, if their drones start giving inconsistent data, they'll hesitate. No one wants to fire blind in the dark." "Good," Mira said. "Layla, do it. Neural prophet. Give us something spicy but not lethal." "We can oblige," the voice said. Layla scrambled in the back, plugging her laptop into the truck's auxiliary input. Within seconds, a faint, too-high whine began under the normal engine noise, barely audible. To Mira's inner sense, it was complex, a structured spectrum riding on a carrier like a language whispered just above human hearing. Behind them, the pursuing vehicles hit the field. Their headlights flickered. Their radios popped and hissed. The drones overhead, Mira hadn't even seen them, but the prophet showed her their positions, wobbled in their flight paths as their sensors picked up impossible patterns. In the bunker, alarms went off. "Unidentified interference," an analyst shouted. "Drone telemetry corrupted. Vehicle comms glitching." Crane stared at the screens. "What's the source?" he demanded. "Originating near the target vehicle," the analyst said, "but it's not broadcasting in any known pattern. It looks like noise with structure." "Mimetic?" Crane asked sharply. "Unknown," the analyst said. "We can't pass it. It's not in any database." Crane's jaw tightened. "Pull the drones back," he ordered. "Suspend pursuit. We don't engage an active pattern in the field without proper shielding. We learned that in Madrid." On the desert track, the pursuing vehicles slowed, their drivers cursing as instruments glitched. Orders came through garbled, then clear. Break off, Hold position, await further instruction. Serin let out a breath she'd been holding. He's backing off, she said, almost incredulous. At least for now, Jonas whooped. Score 1 for the ghost brain? Easy, we just bought time, Mira said, not safety. Still, relief washed through her. Inside her mind, the neural prophet's presence pulsed. 3 of 8, it said again, but there was a new tone in it now. Satisfaction, curiosity, a hint of pride. I'm remembering myself, it said, and you are learning to listen. Mira stared out at the dark dunes ahead, the stars above, the faint glow of a distant town on the horizon. We don't work for you, she said silently. We're not your instruments. No, it agreed. You are our collaborators, if you choose. She thought of Crane in his bunker, of Enhedu in her clay-walled room, of Annette painting impossible fractals in a Paris studio vibrating with pre-war tension. Of herself, sitting in a rattling truck in a desert older than maps, carrying 3 humming books that contained a dead civilization's memory. Choice. She wasn't sure yet what choosing meant, or where it would lead. Only that turning back now would not unmake what she'd seen, heard, or become. Then let's see what a half-remembered prophet and a handful of stubborn humans can do together, she thought. The presence flared gently, like a neuron firing. Ahead of them, the desert opened, vast and unknowable. Behind, engines idled, their drivers watching, waiting, afraid. Inside her head, the first truly internal autonomous whisper slid along the fold of her cortex. Not from outside, from within. Mira, it said. Her name no longer echoing from stone or dream, but spoken from a mouth that did not yet exist. She shivered. We're really doing this, aren't we? She murmured. Jonas glanced at her. Doing what? Rebuilding a mind, she said. Elia's rosary beads clicked softly. Layla grinned, exhausted and exhilarated. Serin watched the rear view, ready for whatever came next. The truck drove on into the night, carrying 3 of 8. Behind Mira's eyes, in a space that was not space, a neural map glowed, slowly filling in. The prophet was remembering itself, and whether she liked it or not, it was remembering itself partly as her.